The decision did not arrive with fanfare. It arrived quietly, behind closed doors, with one signature and a silence heavy enough to shake the palace walls. Charles had removed Camilla from the trooping color plans and named Catherine as lead host. What should have been a celebration of continuity became a royal rupture, exposing a private fracture the monarchy could no longer hide. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles knew exactly what that order would do the moment his pen left the page. He did not call it punishment. He did not dress it up as a small adjustment. The king understood that trooping color, the annual military parade marking the monarch's official birthday, where royal appearances signal rank, unity, and public trust, was never just about horses, uniforms, or ceremony. It was about who stood closest to the heart of the crown when the nation was watching. Camilla received the revised schedule without warning, and the room around her seemed to tighten. She read the first page once, then again, searching for the place where her name should have been. It was not there, not in the center, not beside the main hosting role, not where the queen consort had expected to stand. She did not ask a question at first. She simply held the paper and understood the humiliation before anyone dared explain it. Catherine learned the same decision in a different silence. She had not fought for the role. She had not demanded the spotlight. Yet the princess felt the weight of it settle over her as soon as the words were spoken. Lead host. That title meant she would guide the royal presence during one of the monarchy's most watched public moments, becoming the calm face of a family already shaking behind its polished doors. William was told before Camilla, and that detail cut deeper than any announcement. The prince did not celebrate. He listened carefully, his expression controlled, because he knew what the order meant. Catherine's rise would not be viewed as simple duty. It would be read as a transfer of trust. And trust, inside the palace, had become the most dangerous currency of all. Charles made the command direct for a reason. The revised plan did not leave room for soft correction or private bargaining. A senior aide later described, through a documented palace account, how the wording carried the unmistakable force of final authority. Camilla had not merely been shifted, she had been removed from the emotional center of the day, and Catherine had been placed there in her stead. The first whisper moved fast. Not why had Catherine been chosen, not how would the ceremony change. The question was sharper, colder, and far more dangerous. What had Camilla done to lose the place? And before anyone could understand the order, the people at the center of it began to reveal what this decision had truly cost. Behind the announcement stood 4 people carrying 4 different wounds. Charles carried the burden of authority. Camilla carried the humiliation of being pushed aside. Catherine carried the shock of being elevated so publicly. William carried the suspicion that this was not just about ceremony, but survival. In one palace room, their roles shifted, and nobody left untouched. Charles did not look like a man enjoying power. He looked like a monarch forced to use it. Trooping. Color the royal parade that marks the sovereign's official birthday and shows the family's unity before the nation mattered, because every position sent a message. One step forward could announce trust. One step back could confirm exile. And the king knew that removing Camilla from the lead plan would not feel like paperwork. It would feel like a public wound. Camilla felt that wound before anyone said it aloud. She had stood beside Charles through years of scandal, judgment, waiting, and repair. Now the queen consort saw her place reduced, and the pain was immediate. She was not only losing a role, she was losing the feeling that the king would always protect her position when the pressure rose. Her first reaction was not anger. It was disbelief, the kind that comes when betrayal arrives dressed as duty. Catherine absorbed the news with quiet shock. She had become more than a guest at the edge of the institution. The princess was now being placed as the emotional face of its future, and that mattered, because the public had already begun looking to her for calm when the family seemed divided. But success came with suffering. Every step upward for Catherine made Camilla's fall look sharper, and she understood that before anyone else dared say it. William watched Catherine carefully. The prince knew the honor could turn into a storm, and he chose his words like a man protecting both his wife and the crown. He wanted her seen as steady, not victorious. He wanted the monarchy strengthened, not poisoned by another private feud. But he also knew one painful truth. When Charles moved Camilla aside, he did not simply rearrange a ceremony. He exposed where his confidence now rested. Charles gave no apology. In a documented palace account, shared through a private briefing note, the king told one aide that the family needed clarity. The phrase moved faster than the order itself. Camilla heard it later and understood the hidden meaning. Clarity meant Catherine had been chosen. Clarity meant William had been trusted. Clarity meant the queen consort had become the problem the plan was designed to contain. Camilla then asked the question that made the room colder. Did Catherine know before her? The answer did not need drama. A brief pause was enough. The princess had not planned the removal, but William had been informed early, and that fact deepened the sting. Trust had changed hands quietly, and Camilla could feel it. The emotional fault line was now clear. This was no longer about a balcony, a carriage, or a title. It was about who Charles trusted when the monarchy felt fragile. But trust had not broken in a single morning. It had cracked days earlier, in a moment nobody inside the palace could forget. Every palace crisis has a moment that looks small, until history turns back and points to it. This one began during a private trooping color rehearsal review, when Camilla challenged Catherine's placement in front of senior staff. The room fell silent. Charles heard enough. William saw enough. And from that hour forward, the ceremony stopped being a celebration and became a test. Camilla did not raise her voice, and that made the moment more dangerous. She looked at the proposed formation and questioned why Catherine was being placed so close to the center of the day. A trooping color rehearsal review, a private meeting where royal staff examined the order, roles, and public positions before the ceremony mattered because it decided what millions would later understand without needing an explanation. Placement was power. Distance was judgment. Catherine stayed calm, but William saw the truth in her hands. The princess held her notes tighter, just for a second, and the prince noticed because he knew her silence better than anyone. She had not walked into that room to challenge Camilla. She had walked in prepared to serve. Yet the queen consort's question landed like an accusation, as though Catherine's rise was something unnatural, something pushed too fast, something that needed to be stopped. Charles heard the words and let them hang there. The king did not rescue Camilla from the silence. He did not rush to defend Catherine either. He watched the room change because he understood why the moment mattered. The monarchy needed calm for trooping color, not rivalry. It needed one clear emotional center, not a struggle hidden behind smiles. And in that silence, Charles saw exactly who could steady the day and who could break it. Camilla asked why Catherine was being advanced so quickly, and the phrase cut through the room. Senior staff lowered their eyes. William's face hardened. The prince did not interrupt, but his stillness said enough. Catherine remained composed, yet the princess felt the wound. She understood that the question was not really about order or schedule. It was about trust. It was about who the family believed could carry the future without turning duty into conflict. Charles finally closed the folder. That single movement ended the discussion. According to a documented palace account, later reviewed in a private briefing, the king did not argue with Camilla in front of the room. He simply ended the meeting, thanked the staff, and left the decision hanging like a warning. The queen consort thought she had challenged a placement. Charles saw something far larger. He saw proof. William spoke to Catherine only after the room had cleared. The prince kept his voice low, telling her not to carry Camilla's anger as her own burden. But Catherine knew the damage had already been done. The princess had been placed in the center of a ceremony meant to show unity, and now that very placement had exposed division. Charles made his conclusion before the next morning. If Camilla could not support Catherine's position inside a closed room, the king could not risk that tension shaping trooping color before the nation. By sunrise, a revised plan was already being drafted, and the queen consort's place in the ceremony was quietly disappearing. Once Camilla realized the rehearsal had become evidence against her, the private wound turned into a confrontation. The confrontation happened without witnesses at first. Camilla entered the room holding the revised schedule, her face pale with disbelief, while Charles stood near the desk, refusing to soften the blow. She asked one question: why her name had been taken out. He did not raise his voice. That made it worse. The calmness told her the decision was final. Camilla placed the schedule on the desk and waited for Charles to pick it up. He did not. The queen consort looked at the paper as if it might explain the cruelty for him, but the king kept his hands still. The revised schedule, the official working plan showing who appears, leads, and stands where during a royal event, mattered because it turned private judgment into public order. Once written, it became harder to deny. Charles told Camilla the decision was necessary for unity. He said trooping color could not become another battlefield inside the family. The king understood the ceremony carried more than celebration. It carried a message to the country that the crown still had balance, discipline, and emotional control. If the day looked divided, the monarchy would look weak, and Charles believed weakness was something the family could no longer afford. Camilla heard duty in his words, but she felt rejection in every pause. She had stood beside Charles through storms, criticism, waiting, and years of public judgment. Now the queen consort was being removed from the heart of his most symbolic plan, and she could not separate the order from the marriage. To her, this was not just ceremony. This was the king choosing distance when she expected protection. Charles felt the pain of that truth, but he did not retreat. The monarch knew Camilla wanted him to soften, to say the reduction was temporary, to promise her place would be restored later. He gave her none of it. The king carried the weight of personal loyalty on one side and the survival of the institution on the other. And in that moment, survival won. Camilla pushed the schedule closer. Her voice dropped when she asked if Catherine would really lead. Charles finally answered with the words she feared most. Catherine will lead. The queen consort stared at him, stunned by how cleanly he said it. No apology, no comfort, no gentle explanation, just a line drawn through the old order. Camilla then asked whether William had influenced him. Charles paused. It was not long, but it was long enough. The queen consort understood the silence before the king spoke again. He said the decision was his, yet his face betrayed the larger truth. William had not forced the order, but the prince's concerns had shaped the room around it. Charles later confirmed through a recorded private conversation with a senior aide that he saw the decision as the only way to protect the day from becoming a family contest. That revelation spread quietly through the household and made the confrontation even more painful. Camilla had not simply lost a role. She had been judged as a risk. Camilla stepped back from the desk, and the room seemed colder. She did not shout. She did not plead. The queen consort only looked at Charles as if seeing the crown between them for the first time. Then she turned and left, closing the door with enough force to make the silence speak. William was already waiting beyond that silence. Preparing for the next battle, Catherine never asked to enter. Because once the private argument ended, the question of who truly held power inside the palace could no longer be avoided. Power in the palace rarely announces itself. It moves through schedules, seating charts, private briefings, and names typed in bold. William never needed to shout to change the direction of the day. He only needed to stand beside Catherine, look at Charles, and make clear that the future of the monarchy could not be built around old resentments. William understood that influence did not always sound like command. Sometimes it sounded like caution. The prince had watched Catherine become the calm center of public trust, while the family around her kept slipping into tension. A draft formation plan, the early working layout, showing where each royal would stand, move, and lead during a public ceremony, mattered because it shaped the message before the public ever saw it. And William knew the message had to be clean. Charles still held the final authority. The king was the one who could approve the plan, stop it, or change it with a single instruction. But even Charles could feel the monarchy leaning toward William and Catherine now, not because they demanded power, but because they offered steadiness. The future king did not ask to replace Camilla with force. He simply made the truth impossible to ignore. Catherine could calm the day in a way the queen consort no longer could. Catherine did not celebrate when William told her how serious the decision had become. The princess looked at him with concern, not pride. She knew being named lead host would be read as victory by some and betrayal by others. She told William she would accept the role only if it remained about service. Not revenge, not punishment, not a silent triumph over Camilla. William heard that and softened. The prince had worried that Catherine was being pushed into the storm before the family had protected her from it. He wanted her elevated but not exposed. He wanted the monarchy strengthened, but not at the cost of turning his wife into a weapon. That was the painful balance. Catherine's success could save the ceremony, but it could also make her the center of Camilla's resentment. Then came the quiet move that changed everything. A palace aide later described through a documented internal account how William set down a draft formation plan and removed every confusing overlap between Catherine and Camilla. No dramatic speech, no raised hand, just one careful correction after another. The queen consort would appear, but she would not lead. The princess would guide the day, and the public would see one clear emotional figure. Charles reviewed the final version in silence. The king saw what William had done, and he understood why it worked. The plan did not humiliate Camilla with open cruelty, but it did remove confusion. It gave Trooping Color one calm center. It gave the cameras one steady face. It gave the monarchy a future people could recognize without needing the palace to explain it. William did not look relieved when Charles approved it. The prince knew approval was only the beginning. Catherine had accepted duty, but Camilla would feel the loss. The king had chosen clarity, but clarity inside a royal household often wounds the people who once survived on ambiguity. Charles signed off because the monarchy needed order. William stood firm because Catherine needed protection. Catherine accepted because service demanded courage. And Camilla, though not in the room, was already being moved into a different story. The ink had barely dried before the fallout began moving through corridors, offices, phones, and faces. The palace did not erupt loudly. It fractured quietly. Aides stopped speaking mid-sentence. Phones were answered in lowered voices. Camilla sat alone after the briefing, staring at the version of Trooping Color that no longer revolved around her. Across the palace, Catherine received the same papers and understood instantly that her new role came wrapped in another woman's humiliation. Camilla read the schedule as if the words might change if she stayed with them long enough. They did not. The queen consort saw her role reduced to a controlled appearance, not a central hosting position, and the difference cut deep. An internal schedule, the private palace plan, that tells staff who leads, appears, moves, and stands where mattered, because it turned Charles's decision into daily instruction. Everyone would now work around Catherine. Catherine held her copy with a different kind of pain. The princess saw her name placed at the center, and she understood why it mattered. Trooping Color needed one steady figure, one calm presence, one face that could hold public trust while the family struggled behind closed doors. But Catherine also knew the cost. Her rise had not happened in clean air. It had happened through Camilla's visible loss. Camilla's team tried to reassure her, but every sentence collapsed before it reached comfort. One aide told the queen consort that she would still have an important place. Another said Charles had only simplified the day. Neither explanation survived the truth printed on the page. She had not been trusted to lead. She had been managed. And for Camilla, that was worse than being ignored. Catherine asked one question in private, and it revealed everything about her heart. She asked whether Camilla had already been told. The princess did not smile. She did not treat the role like a prize. She understood that duty could lift one woman while wounding another, and she refused to pretend the pain was invisible. Still, Catherine would not step away. Charles had placed the responsibility in her hands, and she would carry it. Camilla removed her glasses slowly. A courtier later described, through a documented household account, how the queen consort folded the schedule once, then again, and said nothing for several seconds. That silence frightened the room more than anger would have. Camilla was not simply upset. She was calculating what the decision meant for her future beside the king. Charles remained distant from the first wave of fallout. The monarch had made the order, and now the household had to live inside it. He knew loyal staff would feel torn. He knew Camilla would feel exposed. He knew Catherine would feel pressured. But the king also believed confusion had become dangerous, and danger had to be removed before the public day arrived. William watched the pressure build around Catherine and understood what would come next. The prince knew Camilla's hurt could harden into resistance if nobody faced it directly. He also knew Catherine could not be protected forever behind palace language and careful smiles. If she was going to lead, she would have to step into the emotional center of the storm before the ceremony began. Catherine made the choice before anyone asked her to. The princess agreed to meet Camilla face to face, not as a rival, not as a victor, but as the woman now carrying the role the queen consort had lost. What came next was not a public performance, but a private moment between two women standing on opposite sides of the same crown. There were no aides in the room when Catherine and Camilla finally faced each other. No secretaries, no protocol officers, no carefully arranged phrases to soften the damage. Catherine entered with calm resolve, while Camilla looked at her with pain she could no longer disguise. For once, the monarchy was not speaking through titles. It was speaking through two women who knew exactly what had been lost. Catherine had asked for the meeting because silence had become too dangerous. The princess knew the trooping color decision could harden into a private war if she allowed palace staff to speak for her. Trooping color, the monarch's official birthday parade where royal positions send a message of unity and rank, mattered because the public would see the final arrangement as a sign of who carried the family's future. Catherine did not want that sign built on cruelty. Camilla agreed, because refusal would make her look smaller. The queen consort walked into the room, carrying pride, hurt, and the knowledge that everyone already understood what had happened. She had been moved aside. Catherine had been placed forward, and no gentle phrase could hide the truth. For Camilla, the pain was not only the lost role, it was the feeling that the king had allowed her humiliation to become part of the plan. Catherine spoke first, and her voice stayed steady. She told Camilla she had not asked for the removal. She had not pushed Charles to make the order. She had not entered trooping color looking for victory. The princess made that clear, because she understood what the queen consort feared most, that Catherine had quietly accepted another woman's fall as her own rise. Camilla listened, but the hurt did not leave her face. She told Catherine the role should never have been taken from her in such a public way. The queen consort did not shout. That made the words heavier. She had stood beside Charles through years of judgment, and now the king had reduced her place in a ceremony meant to show royal unity. To Camilla, the decision felt like loyalty being answered with distance. Catherine did not deny the wound. The princess said she would not refuse service when Charles placed duty in her hands. A lead host, the main royal figure guiding the public tone of the event, carried responsibility, not just attention. Catherine knew people would call it promotion, but she felt the burden beneath it. She was being asked to steady the crown, while one of its closest figures felt pushed away. Camilla finally saw what she had missed. Catherine was not gloating. The princess was uncomfortable, careful, and deeply aware of the cost. That realization shifted the room. It did not erase the pain, but it softened the anger. The queen consort understood that Catherine had become the face of the decision, not the author of it. Catherine left one sentence behind, and it landed harder than any defense. "I will not turn this day into a victory over you." The princess did not say it for effect. She said it as a promise. Camilla looked away because the words forced her to face the difference between power and grace. Power had moved her aside. Grace had walked in and refused to celebrate it. Charles later heard about the meeting through a recorded private briefing from a senior aide, and the king understood the temperature had changed. William heard too, and the prince recognized what Catherine had done. She had not solved the wound, but she had stopped it from becoming open war. The private temperature cooled, but only inside those walls. Beyond the gates, the world was about to turn Catherine's new role, and Camilla's reduced place into a headline. And when the public finally saw the shape of the new trooping color plan, the reaction was immediate, vivid, and impossible to control. By morning, the palace decision no longer belonged to the palace. It belonged to front pages, broadcasters, commentators, and crowds gathering outside Buckingham Palace. One newspaper printed Catherine's image beside the words, "The new face of trooping color," while Camilla's smaller photograph sat beneath the headline like a verdict. The symbolism was brutal. The public understood the message instantly. Camilla saw the front page before breakfast, and the wound became public in a way she could not control. The queen consort had survived criticism before, but this was different. A front page, the main newspaper cover, that shapes how millions first understand a story mattered, because it turned palace rearrangement into national judgment. Catherine was shown as the rising figure. Camilla was shown as the woman moved aside. Catherine received praise almost immediately, but the princess felt the pressure behind every kind word. Supporters called her graceful, steady, and ready. Critics said the palace had moved too sharply, too visibly, too soon. Trooping color, the monarch's official birthday parade where royal positions signal unity and rank, now looked less like a celebration and more like a transfer of emotional power. Catherine understood that being admired could still feel heavy. Buckingham Palace tried to calm the storm. The official line called the change a smooth ceremonial adjustment, a simple update to help the day flow with dignity. But people did not believe it was simple. They saw the larger message. Charles had removed Camilla from the center and placed Catherine there. The king had not only changed a plan, he had shown the country where he believed stability now lived. Camilla felt the comparison like a second removal. The queen consort could accept a private reduction, even if it hurt. But seeing her smaller photograph beneath Catherine's larger image made the loss feel permanent. She was no longer only dealing with Charles's order, she was dealing with the public's verdict, and that verdict was cold. The nation had noticed the shift, and nobody could fold the page back into silence. Catherine knew the praise could become dangerous. The princess did not want the public to turn Camilla's humiliation into her victory. She had promised not to make the day a triumph over the queen consort, yet the headlines were already doing it for her. That was the cruel contrast. Catherine's grace lifted her higher, while Camilla's pain made the rise look even sharper. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the gates with phones raised, waiting for every broadcast update. Reporters repeated Catherine's new role again and again, and the words spread through the crowd like a signal. One television presenter framed the story as the clearest sign yet that the monarchy is preparing its next emotional center. That phrase gave the moment historic weight, and it struck the palace harder than any accusation. Charles heard the broadcast summary through a recorded media briefing delivered by a senior communications aide. The king listened without interrupting. He knew the public had understood exactly what the order meant. They had seen Catherine as the future and Camilla as the past, being carefully moved aside. The monarch had wanted clarity, and now clarity had arrived with a force even he could not soften. William watched the reaction with controlled concern. The prince knew Catherine had been praised, but he also knew praise could become pressure overnight. He wanted the public to trust her, not consume her. He wanted the monarchy to look steady, not ruthless. And he understood that Charles would now have to define the decision before the headlines defined it forever. The headlines created the noise, but the final meaning of the decision came from the man who had signed it. In the end, the decision was not just about trooping color. It was about what Charles believed the monarchy needed to survive. Camilla had been removed from the center. Catherine had been placed there. William had protected the future. And Charles, with one painful order, admitted what the palace had tried to avoid. The crown now needed a different kind of strength. Charles delivered the final message without drama, because the decision no longer needed noise. The king confirmed that Catherine would remain lead host, and that the trooping color plan would not be reversed. A final internal message, the palace instruction, that settles a decision for staff, schedules, and official planning, mattered, because it ended every private hope of reversal. Once that message moved through the household, the old plan was gone. Camilla absorbed the finality with sadness, not rage. The queen consort understood that her influence had not vanished completely, but her place at the center had been visibly reduced. That was the wound. She could still stand beside Charles. She could still carry royal weight. But she could no longer assume that ceremonial control belonged to her by default. The king had drawn a line, and everyone had seen where Catherine stood. Catherine accepted the role with humility, because she knew her rise had come through a painful break. The princess had not built this moment with ambition. She had inherited it through duty, silence, and trust. Trooping color, the monarch's official birthday parade where the family's public positions carry deep meaning, now became more than a ceremony. It became the clearest sign that Catherine was no longer waiting at the edge of the future. She was being placed inside it. William stood beside Catherine afterward, steady but not triumphant. The prince understood what had been won and what had been wounded. He did not see Camilla's reduction as a celebration. He saw it as the cost of making the monarchy appear controlled again. The future king knew the public needed clarity, but he also knew clarity inside a family could feel like a blade. Charles made one final gesture that settled everything. According to a documented palace account shared through a private briefing, the king placed the approved trooping color file into the outgoing dispatch stack without reopening it. A dispatch stack, the pile of official papers, ready to move from the monarch's desk into action, mattered because it meant the order had passed from thought into command. Charles did not hesitate. He did not revise. He let it go forward. Camilla saw the meaning even before anyone explained it. The queen consort's era of unquestioned ceremonial control had ended. Catherine's role as the monarchy's emotional anchor had begun. William had protected the shape of the future, and Charles had chosen survival over comfort, even when that choice cut into his own home. The verdict was clear. Trooping color became the day the palace stopped pretending the future was waiting. It became the day Catherine was placed at the front of it. Camilla stepped back with pain. William stood firm with restraint. Charles carried the burden of the order he had signed, and the monarchy moved forward. Not untouched, not unbroken, but changed forever. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.